At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner, however you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
Hey everybody, it's Meredith with a Sidebar episode of Love Letters. And today we're going to talk about the most exciting text message I've received in a long time, which was our producer Caitlin texting me to tell me she had seen When Harry Met Sally for the first time. It doesn't even occur to me that people haven't seen When Harry Met Sally, and I forget that people are allowed to be younger than me and perhaps to have seen less TV than me and movies. But Caitlin, welcome today. I'm interviewing you as the guest because you have had what I hope was a life-changing experience, maybe for better, maybe for worse.
Absolutely life-changing. And also it is inexcusable that I hadn't already seen it. That's like a fair thing to say.
I don't want to get too personal. Well, I do, but can you just sort of talk about your age and like kind of what were some big romantic movies from like your youth, teen years, like, you know, developmentally at like 15 to 25, what were you like, oh, these are the iconic romantic films of, you know, being a person?
Oh my God. Okay. So I'm 28, so I'm a young millennial. And that means that like when I was watching my heft of romantic comedies, it was like the Matthew McConaughey, J-Lo, Kate Hudson era, like Katherine Heigl, etc. My sister and I also, we didn't have cable and we lived in a small town and there wasn't that much to do. So we rented from Movie Time Video, our local DVD rental, many a romantic comedy. So a couple I can think of would be 27 Dresses. Mm-hmm. That is a classic.
When you say J-Lo, are we talking like The Wedding Planner? Are we talking Made in Manhattan?
Yes, Wedding Planner, Made in Manhattan. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That was a big one in our household. Also, I don't know if this like technically qualifies as a romantic comedy, but Miss Congeniality is like, in my opinion, just like a perfect movie.
For sure. Listen, it's its own genre, Miss Congeniality. But it's interesting because you would have been younger than those characters, so you would have been looking to them as like, this is what adult love, main character love is, right?
Oh my gosh. Between those movies and then like renting DVDs of like box sets of The OC and like One Tree Hill, I was like, this is what being like a teenager in like a city / an adult is like.
So I want to talk about When Harry Met Sally because it's a movie I loved when I was growing up. Then I started to resent, yet still loved, and now I love again, but obviously has some themes that, you know, doesn't align with the kind of advice I give and the kind of things I write in my column that don't necessarily hold up, but is just still such a wonderful love story and to me very much made also by secondary characters. And I just wanted to know from your perspective, like sort of what you thought it would be and then what it was. Like, did you get the hype?
Yeah. So all I really knew, besides the fact that it's like a classic and like Meg Ryan, Billy Crystal, besides that, I knew that my mom is like, can be at times a very particular orderer. And my dad will be at restaurants and call her Sally. And so like that was like,
I feel so fucking old.
I'm so sorry. That was like what I knew going in. And then like the Cat's Deli scene, like that was what I had going in.
Right. You knew I'll have what she's having.
Yeah. So that's what I knew going in.
Did you know that Carrie Fisher was in the film?
I think I maybe did, but I did not know how in it she is and just like how exceptional she is and how good the hair and the fashion is. Ugh, I loved it. She's such a good part.
this puts me in like an age bracket that is identifiable. But like for me, when I first saw the film, I was like, oh, they got Princess Leia. Like, how did they pull it off? Right. And then, of course, like as I got a little bit older, I read everything she ever wrote and started learning more about all the things she wrote that we didn't know she wrote. And her delivering that someone else could be married to your husband monologue about, you know, sort of the Rolodex, and we got to pull out the Rolodex after a breakup, and how beautiful it is when that character falls in love and gets to be in the relationship that is actually, to me, quite enviable. And the fact that we've lost both of those actors, right? They both died young. It was, you know, now when I see that movie, that romance is actually in some ways a primary, very special romance to me, of two people who escape dinner because they like each other more than the people they're trying to set up.
Can I tell you my absolute favorite moment from the whole movie?
Yes.
Because it's both of those characters. It's when they're in bed together and Carrie Fisher turns to him and says, like, oh God, I don't want to butcher the line, but it's like, promise me I'll never have to be out there again.
Yes, you're not butchering the line.
Says, I promise you'll never have to be out there again. Okay, I feel like when we talk about this, you have to know the context in which I watched this movie, which was on a Delta flight back from a podcasting conference. And I was like very dehydrated and very tired. And that line came on and I burst into tears on this Delta flight.
I want you to know that line, I think for people who saw it as adults and in real time, that line was in some ways as iconic as I'll have what she's having.
Oh my
God.
It
might not be quoted as much, but anyone who's ever dated and seen that movie will promise me I'll never have to do this again. And it's like, promise me I'll never have to be out there again. And it's that's what I'm saying. That love story, that, you know, it just always made me so hopeful. I mean, one thing I truly despise about the film and feel bad about is that in my column, you know, where people write questions and I'll give an answer, old school advice style, and commenters will comment on it, a lot of the commenters will still say men and women can't be friends. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, of course, they're talking about straight men and women, and they're also wrong. They're also wrong. Yeah. I think that many people my age would, when we were younger, and certainly people my parents' age would say like, oh, well, men and women can't be friends, right? Which is a theme of the movie. And I wondered how that hit for someone your age watching it for the first time.
Yeah, no, that was like, I mean, I have like a pros and cons list on my phone that I took when I was watching this. And
please tell me. I want to know every part of that list.
So here it is. And it says con. I mean, we could get into lots of like, there's not one big con. There's lots of cons. Like, there are no people of color in this movie. It is very heteronormative. Like, this
is a Friends style movie.
Yeah. So like all of that, huge con. But the other con I have written down simply says the misogyny, comma, obviously. And then it says ... men can't be friends with women because they always want to have sex with them. Like, everything he says in like the first 2/3 of the movie about women, and really the whole movie, is just like the worst. It's the worst.
Here at Life Kit, NPR's self-help podcast, we love the idea of helping you make meaningful lifestyle changes. Our policy, don't be too punishing on yourself or too grand in your goals, which is why we've got shows on how to help you make little nudges to your behavior and create habits that stick. Join Life Kit to get the tools you need. Listen to the Life Kit podcast from NPR.
What's going on? It's Posty. I just created my own Oreo, and it's seriously the best Oreo ever. Pick it up in stores.
Experience Post Malone's Oreo cookies with swirled salted caramel and shortbread flavored cream. Pick up a pack at participating Walmart stores for a limited time.
So the movie comes out in 1989. This is a very big year for my understanding of my own probable heterosexuality at the time. Batman with Michael Keaton comes out, and I was like, oh, I like him, right? Yeah. So suddenly sexual awakening. Listen, I was learning and paying attention to how men and women dealt with each other, which was, didn't have many great examples at that point.
Yeah.
The fact that this movie is framed and sort of dotted with these very funny vignettes of couples. Very Nora Ephron. Some couples with the most beautiful stories. Others depressed me greatly. And, I think one of them I remember, he's basically just like, then his second wife, then his third wife. And he's just sort of like,
she's
this
like
woman,
reminding him of their names.
Yes. And these women are interchangeable. And it's very funny as a punchline. But even at that age, I was like, why does anybody want to do this? And what is so weird about it is that you get to the end, spoiler for, I think a lot of people have seen it, but I will say that we do get to see Harry and Sally as one of these couples. And you get the sense, like, are all these people, are we to romanticize this and say these are all wonderful couples, or are some people just settling with the person who puts up with them, and what is the difference?
Oh my God, I think about that all the time. Just in like a very general sense. I am at like a point in my life where I'm thinking about that all the time. But everything you're saying about being like kind of like the macro issue in this movie, which is that like, it's like guy talks poorly about women all the time and then like ends up with like the female protagonist. That like when I was watching those movies that I was watching when I was like a preteen and teen that we talked about, like that is like the exact same plot device. Like we're still using that, or at least we were using that, like 15 years ago as a plot device. And I was like, oh, that's what love is. The guy you're supposed to end up with is that guy, like we were still being told that.
And that I know these are films about romance, so fundamentally people are supposed to narratively couple up, by the end. But one of the things I love about ensemble many character movies is that it gives them room to let some characters remain single and thrilled about it.
I've never thought about that. I love that.
One of the things I love about Four Weddings and a Funeral, and maybe that's another one you haven't seen, but there is a character that winds up coupled in sort of a funny montage, but not in the way you'd think, right? Not everybody winds up together. So I think with a movie like this one, it's clear that the end game is the end game. And but it's also one of the reasons, if we're talking about Nora Ephron, why I so appreciate Sleepless in Seattle, even though it is about magic and you just know when you touch someone and this sort of love at first sight vibes type of language that is lovely and romantic, but also like really hard to capture and doesn't always lead us to the right places.
Yeah.
But we get to see them single, basically, or on their way to being single, in Meg Ryan's case, the whole movie. You see Tom Hanks as a widower, building a life, living a life, thinking about what he needs. And we actually don't get much of a movie with him with Meg Ryan. Like, that's when the movie ends.
That's true. I don't know if you feel this way, but in any movie where there's like an alleged female journalist, I'm like, I want to see her work. Why is she never working?
Right. And why does she have the budget to just fly to Seattle to do a story about some dude? Oh my God. The expense accounts for journalists in these films, even 27 Dresses, he can just do whatever he wants. Yeah, he could just do whatever he wants. So no, it is true.
I did my like number one thing on my pros list on this iPhone notes app note I have is just Sally's deep dedication to her female friendships. I like love her friendship with Carrie Fisher. And even like at the beginning, like our whole opening scene is she's driving Harry back from college. She will not cross any lines because he is the boyfriend of one of her friends. And I always love seeing female friendships depicted on screen.
That friendship is great. Obviously the outerwear and sweaters are spectacular. It is beautiful
New York
scenery.
in the fall. Yeah.
And I will tell you, the other day I was in Vermont and stopped somewhere, and what I saw at the front of an antiques place was a wagon wheel table. And I paused and thought about the mentioning of a wagon wheel table. I mean, the way Sally dropping letters into a mailbox and then watching to make sure they get down the mailbox is the most relatable content.
Did you see yourself in that?
Oh my God. I think so many people saw themselves in all of the small things she does, and the way Nora Ephron beautifully writes someone who overthinks a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I always also think about when I was picking out my kitchen tile, I always think about that scene where she's like, we have this beautiful tile, but we don't have sex on it. And who would?
It is like, so that is the thing I think I most did not expect. Is it like a hilarious movie?
It's
like
Nora Ephron
the
is
writing is just
hilarious.
Hilarious.
This is a good segment. Does it hold up for Caitlin?
The answer for this doesn't hold up for Caitlin is yes. When Harry Met Sally holds up for me. I cried on a Delta flight watching this movie, and that says something.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Love Letters is a production of the Boston Globe and PRX. Today's episode was produced by Caitlin Harrop and Scott Hellman. Ned Porter does our audio mixing, sound design, and mastering. Devin Smith and Maddie Mortel do our audience engagement. Love Letters illustrations by Ashanti Davis. Check them out on the Love Letters Instagram. Special thanks to Brian McGrory and Linda Henry. Our music is from APM. If you like the show, please follow us on Apple Podcasts. And of course, keep your eye out for new full-length episodes of Love Letters. Season 7 is underway, and we've got a ton of great stories about big changes. You can always send us a letter, we are an advice column, to loveletters@boston.com. We're online at loveletters.show. I'm Meredith Goldstein. Thanks for listening.